A warm welcome to all our viewers to our series Natural Medicine. Today we're talking about fasciae. Fasciae, the new discovery as an organ of our body. I've been hearing about it for 3, 4, 5 years. How important the fasciae are, what it is exactly and what it means for us. I'd like to discuss with a movement expert who is here today. It's no one less than Karl Müller. So stay tuned, we'll be there in a moment. Welcome, dear Karl. Thank you for doing me the honour once again to be able to talk about our musculoskeletal system with you. Thank you, Alexander. You once told me upstairs while drinking coffee that the fasciae are actually the largest organ in our body. I've always said it's actually the skin. Then you said that the skin belongs to the fasciae. Please explain it to me, the importance of fasciae for our body. Well, it's not that easy and quick to tell. The fasciae have a huge spectrum. It used to be known as connective tissue. In studies, in medicine, it's what you used to cut away in the past. It was a rediscovery of the fasciae insofar as that we recognise more and more what the tasks of these fasciae are, what they can do, what tasks they have. And we could talk a little bit about that today, because as a movement scientist, the fasciae play a very, very large part in the movement. The first thing I have in my head when I see this connective tissue, when operations are performed and it's cut, then this flow of information, of energies, of I don't know what else, but it's broken forever. This is something, for example, that was previously underestimated, that when you cut through the fascia layers, that then scars appear and movement is prevented. So, if you have a scar from a caesarean section on the belly, for example, then this can result in back pain for these women years later. And that's why it's important that after a caesarean section, you make a scar therapy to make it soft and smooth again. But maybe to explain a little how it works. One of the tasks of the fasciae to enable this mobility, let's take a cast as an example, then you see the opposite. So what happens when the fasciae no longer move? For example, if you have an elbow in a cast for 6 weeks, the elbow is kept still by a cast, and then you remove the cast and the elbow has taken on the shape of this cast. It can hardly be moved a millimetre. And that it has become so stiff is because the connective tissue, the fasciae, have stuck together. There are a lot of layers. When I move my wrist like this, then you can see the skin, the outer skin, and not just the outer skin, but all fascia that are below. Fascia is everything that is soft tissues, so everything that is not bone is basically fascia. And that's related to the whole body. And if a joint is stiff somewhere, and I still do the work, this joint is stiff and I still want to screw in a screw, for example, then I have to compensate for that with other movements. And when you walk, that's a really big story. When we see how children are highly flexible, what they can do, and how we then, in old age, become immobile and stiff, then it has to do with the fact that the feet And you can see that in older people. They just drag their feet behind them. So you only use your feet to put your leg down, so to speak, but take a step out of your hips. And the feet are basically immobile. And because the feet are so immobile, knees and hips and back have to compensate for that. And when a joint or when a muscle has to compensate, then it's doing something wrong. And when you do something wrong, there is wrong movement and stiffening. So, in the end, we humans stiffen because the fascia have started to stiffen somewhere. It's very often in the feet, most of the time. I have another interesting aspect to bring in. We have 5 senses, don't we? Those are known: sense of taste, sight, hearing, smell, touch. Now, I ask you, Alexander, what is the sense of balance? Is that the sixth sense, or what is it? Good question. Basically, nobody knows. The sense of balance is the combination of the 5 senses. If you stand on one leg and close your eyes, you can easily lose your balance. Yes, absolutely. When we stand on one leg with one hand on the wall, then it's very easy to stand. If we take our hand away, it's more difficult. So the sense of touch has a lot to do with the sense of balance. Also, if your feet touch the floor, also your hearing has a great influence on your sense of balance. That is known. But also the sense of smell and taste, everything has an influence on the sense of balance. And this sense of balance is in the fasciae. When the fasciae are mobile, then this sense of balance works much better. The more adhesions we have in the body, the worse the sense of balance works. That means the risk of falling for older people. Exactly, the risk of falling. That might be a separate topic. The risk of falling is extremely interesting, but this sense of balance, it's lost the more adhesions there are on the body, the more immobile we are. Great new tip. Absolutely, really great. Let's look at this, the mobility, that's something. If I do something like that, I don't have any blood in my legs. I do this in the field for an hour and a half every morning. I'm self-sufficient. At the moment, I'm picking strawberries. Then, when weeding, I try to do this Asian squat, or deep squat as it's also called, as often as possible because it keeps you flexible. It actually keeps almost all joints flexible. But again, if I do that now, I have the feeling that my legs are getting numb. I have no more circulation because I somehow have the feeling I squeeze the blood vessels because you are the most likely standing on your forefoot because you don't have the mobility that the knees can go so far in front of your feet. Then you have to stand on your forefeet, and most people can't walk with flat feet on the floor because of the immobility of the feet. And that's exactly the problem, the mobility of the feet. It's a very big problem because if the mobility of the feet decreases, then you compensate upwards. And a lot of back pain comes from the immobility of the feet. Of course, feet also need balance and strength. But mobility is a big key. And our problems in old age, so stiffness and the loss of mobility in old age, come from everyday life, from sitting so much. If you sit like this, you're more likely to lose mobility than if you sit like this. I'll test that in the next show with you. I wasn't able to do that either. Well, I've lived in Korea for 20 years. If you always sit cross-legged on the floor, it's a bit of a hassle here because it squeezes so much. So the lotus position is a bit of a challenge here now, but the normal cross-legged position is fine. And do you feel good now? The blood flows much more comfortable than when I sit like you, because it gives me flexibility. And when I gain flexibility in everyday life, you can of course also do exercises. I also do a few exercises. Getting up without hand support, lying on your back, without momentum and without any support getting up from the floor. That's an exercise, by the way, as a viewer you can test how many ground contacts you need to get up. That says something about your mobility. It would be ideal to stand up from your back with your arms crossed, without momentum. Small kids, 2, 3, 4-year-olds can do this without any problems. They don't need hands to get up. That says something about the mobility. And you get that through change of behaviour in everyday life. And one of the changes is just sitting less, sitting differently, walking more. And when you pick something up off the floor, go down into a deep squat and so on. Stiffening, that makes sense. A cast stiffens. It sticks together the fasciae, and then the fasciae can no longer function because the fasciae have many, many tasks. One is to keep your sense of balance. Another is, from my point of view, I haven't heard that anywhere else. For me, the fascia apparatus is the onboard computer of people. When I walk, a reflex when I walk, if I almost fall and then catch myself again, it's not controlled by the brain. These are reflexes that happen, and reflexes and also many controls happen in the fascia apparatus itself, in nerve endings, in the fascia apparatus. The fascia apparatus itself has sensors. They're called Golgis, Rufinis, Pacchinis in technical jargon of fascia research. And there's a lot of regulation and control there. Much more than you think. And when you operate on a person, it's cut through. And as you said before, then information is lost. And I wouldn't do it to myself to get my fascia apparatus cut through. I had to. Well, had to, others then told me I didn't have to do that either. I didn't know that you didn't necessarily have to operate on the appendix. Apparently. I did it. And of course even there it's minimally invasive, but in 3 places the fascia tissue was cut, became immobile there. Then I did scar therapy, so that mobility is brought back as far as possible. Because the mobility of the fascia apparatus is much, much more important than we believe. When I think of cast, I only remember that with a cast it's always said that muscle wastage is the reason why we're so stiff. Actually, it's not true. The muscles recede a bit, but of course it's the fascia stick together by never moving them. It makes perfect sense. Maybe we have to see what are the muscles and what are fascia. Muscle wasting, yeah, you maybe have half of it after 6 weeks. There you can also see how quickly muscles recede when we don't need them. Use it or lose it, right? Unfortunately, the top left one doesn't work. It doesn't matter, but we know how the baby bounces. A baby that bounces, right. And when we walk on flat ground, in supportive shoes, maybe even with insoles, now it bounces. Ah, yes, exactly. Then the movement of the foot is not used in whole. Our feet are actually built so that we can walk balancing and barefoot in nature. And when we balance, only when we balance, anytime and anywhere, walking, balancing, we use all muscle neuromyofascia anytime and anywhere. I'll put it this way now, because the muscles are actually just the myofibrils. That's just the muscles. Only these red muscle fibres, which only actually have one function, to contract. But they are embedded in a shell, and in this shell is the intelligence that tells the muscle fibre what to do. And the individual fibres are reconnected in packages. Everything is always packed. And this packaging, these are the fasciae. And in this packaging are the raphenes, the pacines, the Golgis, which control or regulate. Yes, you have to say regulate the activation of the muscles. And only if we are barefoot, like above in the middle, or below on elastic springy material, when we walk and stand like this, then all neuromyofascia are always needed, and thus also trained. Kept moving. If we stop moving them, you can see that in a cast, then they recede immediately. And we have many muscles in our body that we hardly move. First and foremost, these are the deep, fine, small muscles. There, the fascia are stuck together, shortened, and therefore we can no longer go down into the bridge. As a toddler, you can make the bridge while standing. You can cross your legs. Put the legs also behind the head. Of course, yeah, sure. As a toddler, you can do that. It's just no longer possible because fasciae are stuck together. And there is the connection again to wrong sitting, wrong movement, wrong footwear. Because if we actually walk on concrete all the time, we actually have a completely different walk with blows. The fasciae cannot do that, don't have this movement mechanism, do they? Yeah, because our everyday life is no longer natural, because we have other jobs. We work on the phone, on the computer, we sit way too much and so on, because our everyday life isn't right. And of course, the footwear too, although it's actually not the footwear, it's actually the ground. Sure, it's the concrete, yeah, the concrete, and that's why I thought about it. When I noticed in Korea that when I walk on the elastic springy rice fields, that the pain's going away in the knees, the hips, the Achilles pain, I thought, then I'll get this elastic springy rice field soil in my everyday life. Is that your first prototype there? This is the first prototype. I just looked for elastic springy material. I wrapped it around my feet with duct tape. Then I walked around on the street for a few weeks. Then with the socks, then I sewed a sock on, and then went with these sock shoes. And I noticed, yeah, a lot's happening. Now all of a sudden, your feet have to work more. Now they have to work, like running in the grass. So it looks like you are in the grass, as if you're somewhere in nature where it's most comfortable. In nature there are, of course, hard pebbles, rocks, there's sand, there are many different things, right? And that's the most pleasant thing, such a soft, elastic, springy field of moss. That means that this is real fascia training now, starting with the feet. Yeah, because that can only start with the feet. If I'm already limiting something at the bottom, then I'm also limiting or doing something wrong at the top. And here you can see the fascia. The ones that are stuck down there on the left, they don't move properly anymore. Inside that tube are those dumb red muscle fibers. Well, dumb. We always talk about them. When we say muscles, we are actually referring to the muscle fascia package. And the fibers, the muscle fibers, they're red. And then around every tiny fibre, these are myofibrils. They're very, very small, barely visible. And they have a shell, and they have a larger shell around them. The package has another one. Everything that is white is shells, and that's the fascia, and that's where the intelligence is. And for you now, you can actually pull out every single fascia of this tube. You are so flexible. Well, of course, I'm not flexible everywhere, but a 2-year-old or a newborn, they're folded up like a pocket knife in the womb. Everything is completely soft. And with me, these are now stuck together a bit more, that I can't get them out individually. The stiffer you are, the more is stuck together. And then you tear them. The control from the brain and from up here, it wants to control one, but pulls all of them along, and because the pain receptors are in the fascia, also those, they are there, and then it hurts. It's not the osteoarthritis that hurts, but these pain receptors. They are being pulled, and this triggers pain in the brain. That is, of course, another very revolutionary statement that should actually be heard by many medical professionals today. What you just said, all of this is known in fascia research, but it's not in the universities yet. It doesn't matter that much yet. It's used more and more in physiotherapy. There are fascia therapy methods there, like the fascia distortion model, all sorts of things. Quite painful methods where you have to squeeze, you press a point somewhere, a painful point, remain there. By the way, also with the fascia rollers, fascia balls, it becomes more and more popular. Exactly, my wife has such a fascia roller, but when I roll it over my leg, it really hurts. Yeah, and especially when you don't roll, especially when you found the point and stay there, that hurts, and that's a sign of adhesions. And then, is it good if it hurts for a long time? Yeah, but the pain goes away. You stay on a point for a minute or two, and the pain will decrease. Great therapy. Painful, but you have sinned for a long time with what you did. So it's good to go on a painful point with these rollers and stay there, with rollers, with balls, through manual therapy by the physiotherapist. It's good, yeah, it's good when the mobility increases and the pain that you experience decreases. And it works, in most cases, it works. Okay? Here you can see other perspectives on the fasciae. Individual fasciae can be seen at the top left. There are ligaments, there are fascia shells, there are fascia threads. By the way, in nature, at the bottom left, you can see these fascia cords. Bottom left, like power cables. And then information really flows through the fascia. I only imagine if there is a cut in this thick skin that you have over your body, over your chest. This is such a destruction. So much is being destroyed. It's unbelievable, isn't it? I can maybe do an exercise with the audience. A lot of people have neck pain and problems here. If you pull your chin back a little now, you can do that as a viewer. Pull back your chin, then slowly turn your head to the left as far as you can, and then it stops somewhere. Either it stops with a pain and only with a pull. Then do the same on the right side. And then you might see a difference. I didn't notice a difference now because everything is really loose here. I get much further on one side than on the other. Yeah, you get further, and in a lot of cases when you have neck pain, it hurts, doesn't it? And if it hurts, you have to pull the meat on your ribs away from the ribs, pull it up, and do the same thing again. First of all, the head becomes much lighter. It really is. Yeah, but you really have to pull. Indeed. If we push very far up, yeah, there was a change. And you get further, and people who are in pain, in most cases, say the pain's gone. What is this? It's exciting to see how that relates. It's fascinating. These are these fascia. The skin also belongs to the fascia, up to the ribs, all the layers. And if you maybe even pull them like that above the breasts, so pull them up, then what happened now? Why can the head turn better? Why doesn't it hurt anymore? Because it doesn't have to tear anymore. You gave in 2 centimeters. Because it's like a shirt in pants. Because we're walking on hard, flat floors. And bend forward more and more because we're stiff. Because we have way too much tension, especially at the front. We're stiff. The shirt pulls me forward. And the muscles behind must pull against it. That puts a lot of pressure on the shoulder. I solved that because I've loosened those fascia layers in front. I loosened that. And then that'll be loose, and therefore you can solve neck problems. You can see that in this slide. I've now jumped forward a bit to the skeleton again. You said that's how we usually walk on the right, because the shirt is the fascia, the front fascia line. It pulls like a shirt in your pants, pulls everything forward. Because the foot falls on the floor, because the retracted foot doesn't straighten the body. On the left, the foot rolls slowly, powerfully, and pulls the body like in a high jump. To jump up, you have to push off at the front. It rolls off nicely. Pulls the leg backwards. You can also see the thigh pulling much further back on the left. Everything is pulled forward on the right. The fascia chain in front pulls. It's much too short, and if you extend it by hand, then suddenly you become pain-free. I'll go back there again because you can see that wonderfully here. That I've totally changed the way I walk through my feet here, right? Just by walking. If you walk like this on elastic, springy material, the body straightens up. Of course, if there are fasciae adhesions, you have to loosen them painfully through rollers, through physiotherapy. But then it really stays. Yeah, then it stays, exactly. I think this is nice too. The gentleman on the left had surgery, didn't he? The gentleman is a minister from the Philippines. No, he actually has a prosthesis. And just on this carpet that's close to the natural floor that you have there, he's walking straight. It's from 1 second to the next. He came like he looked on the left. I thought, I'm taking a cell phone recording. Asked him if I can take a cell phone recording. He said yes, because from 1 second to the other, he didn't have to learn anything, nothing. He just walks on soft, elastic, springy material on such a mat. And barely limps. What is it? That is the onboard computer of the fascia, which controls the body in a completely different way. And these are abilities in the fascia apparatus, which he has and through which he is also this onboard computer. And you have to be careful that you cut something on this onboard computer only if there are serious accidents, but certainly not in the case of osteoarthritis or for degenerative pain. There are other options. Many people just want to get rid of the pain quickly and then have an operation. But you know, we can start now. If it starts to hurt now, you don't have to wait until the last moment. You can react now. And that should also represent our prevention program, that you can actually begin to soften the fascia apparatus through your feet. Where can I get more information? Is there a platform somewhere where I can read even more about it? Maybe you have it below, now in this video below. You may have put a link. Oh, yes, of course. I'll put it on for YouTube. But for television, you are welcome to say it. Where can I find more information? At kibun.ch or kibun.com. And in these shops, which you have all over the world, you'll also receive intensive advice there, also about the fascia apparatus. In the Kibun Joya shops, you can get this consultation, Kibun Joya therapy. It's best to get consultation locally, in the shops or else online. Kibun, by the way, Kybun. Or Joya with Joya. Great. Thank you very much, dear Carl. It's a fascinating topic to me, and it's such a big, important topic that's not actually been properly presented or conveyed. It's also the first time for me to do an episode about fascia. But when I see how it all relates, and doing this exercise with the chest, it's really fascinating. And the shirt example is also logical, so logical. Maybe we need to talk a lot more about exercises, what we could do to make this fascia apparatus even softer. Not just about the shoes, that's the easiest thing to do, just walk in them, of course. But how can I still encourage and support that I become softer again? And I think that's a very important point up to old age, that you stay really healthy. You can find a lot on the internet. If you look under fascia therapy, if you look under fascia rollers, or if you look under muscle length training, you find a lot. Great. Thank you very much, dear Carl. And you too, dear viewers. I hope we could show and convey the great importance of the fascia a bit, and also show where and why we become more immobile, what really sticks in our body, and why it tears and pulls and hurts, and what we can do about it. And for me, it's fascinating that we can do so much for our entire fascia apparatus with just our feet. And maybe a little warning. If somehow possible, please react early. Even if there is pain, react early and try to really prevent an operation somehow. Because we've seen that when an operation happens, there's a cut and then the thing is really hurt. And in my opinion, there's still a complete lack of research. What it actually is that you break is completely lacking research. Research is in full swing. We know a lot, we even know very much, I would say. Of course, probably only 1,000th or 1,000,000th of the whole truth, but it is much, much more than it was 10 years ago, but it hasn't got down to the base yet. Physiotherapists know a lot more than most doctors. It's always the same. When I talked to Professor Schubert about psychoneuroimmunology, he says we have long since changed the basis in such a way that there's nothing left to discuss, but we don't have a lobby. And as long as the lobby is not there, it just changes slowly in a sluggish machine. But it changes and it will be well. All the best, dear viewers. See you next time.